everyone. I'm Liz Eggleston, and I run Course Report, which is a resource for students who are choosing a coding boot camp. And today we are getting a firsthand look at career services at one of the first boot camps in the US, General Assembly. So according to our latest research, 91% of students attend a boot camp in order to land a job as a developer. Some do it just for fun. Some are looking for a promotion at their current job. But generally, bottom line, career services are a really important part of any boot camp. And especially over the past year, as everything has shifted online, that raised a whole new set of questions, like how you connect with a career coach remotely and how a career coach in one state can support you if you're looking for a job across the country. So we're going to talk about all of that today with our two guests who are going to explain how career services actually work. So we've got two guests today, Ramesh, who is a career coach at General Assembly, and Cesarina, who is a recent General Assembly graduate. And Ramesh was actually Cesarina's career coach. So these are the two perfect people to answer all of our questions. So Ces and Ramesh, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having
us.
Yay. Well, Cesarina, I want to start with you. So what were you up to before General Assembly, before you decided to do a coding boot camp?
Yeah, so before General Assembly, I was like a lot of people, unemployed due to COVID. And, you know, prior to that, really, I was in the running to like join the military. So that path had a lot of resistance, and to some degree, it felt like it was no longer my path. And so I kind of just decided to change routes. I had some experience in like computer science classes that I had taken previously at like more traditional institutions. And I realized, you know, that's really kind of like what I'm interested in. And I really enjoy the freedom that the tech industry sort of provides as far as like working from home and the type of culture that you can find in software. So that is what I was doing. And I chose GA, and I'm really, really happy that I did.
What was your goal when you started GA? Like I mentioned, you know, it's like the overwhelming majority of people want to get a job as a developer when they graduate, but was that your actual goal to get that first job as a like junior engineer?
So my goal actually was to get the confidence to approach a job in tech. Not necessarily a developer job. I didn't know if I wanted to be coding all day. My job is not coding all day. But that was my goal essentially, just for me personally to be able to feel like, okay, I've got enough backing and enough fundamental work and study that I've done that I can say, I can approach this with a certain type of confidence. And I feel like I've been able to achieve that.
That's awesome. Okay, well, I want to talk about your career and what you have achieved in a second. But Ramesh, thank you for joining us. How did you actually become a career coach?
So Liz, I have an interesting story, interesting background. So like most General Assembly students or like most bootcamp graduates, I'm a career changer. So by education, I'm a mechanical engineer and an MBA graduate. I worked in a lot of different countries, different roles. And then 3 years ago, I fell in love with career counseling. I was invited for a workshop at my alma mater, Northeastern University, and the advice really resonated with the students. And then I had this long queue of students waiting to talk to me. So that was the moment which was like, whoa, I can do a good job of being a career coach. And that from there, I took the right steps, got a certificate in career counseling, and also did few contracts. And now I'm here at General Assembly as a career coach.
That's so cool. It's cool to kind of find your passion in helping others change their own careers. That's really neat. So Cesarina, you said that you were really happy that you chose GA, but how did you actually make that decision? Like, what was your research process like, and what were you looking for in a boot camp?
Really, my main criteria was, how can I see this really benefiting me in the long run? And what attracted me most was the career coaching. To me, that was like a really defining like asset that they have, General Assembly, as opposed to like other career or other boot camps. They really didn't seem to have this this portion, and I felt like this was kind of intuitive, you know, like at least certainly for me, I'm a career switcher. My background is like not in software, it's not in tech. And I was like, I really don't know that if I were to complete a boot camp, I wouldn't need or wouldn't benefit from a career coach. So that for me was really it. That was the defining factor.
Did you like ask about career services explicitly in the in your application process or like in the admissions process?
I did, yeah, I did. In the talks that I had with I guess my application manager, Tiani, who's super awesome, by the way. I remember asking like how I guess how thorough or like how hands-on is the career coaching aspect. And you know, what really attracted me was knowing that there was going to be like every week some time dedicated to career coaching, but the outcomes portion itself after you've graduated, that to me felt really, really vital to be able to just have the confidence and have like the motivation to continue to job search, because that can get really frustrating sometimes and discouraging.
Yeah, that's a huge asset. And like, you know, credit to you to actually asking about that up front, because I feel like you know, there are a lot of boot camps and a lot of nuance within the career, you know, the approach to careers and outcomes, and really asking about that up front and being like, what am I going to be doing weekly? Am I going to have support after I graduate? Those are really good questions to ask. And so, Ramesh, as a career coach, like, tell us about what that actually looks like. How many students do you work with at a time? And like, when do you get connected to a student like Cesarina?
Yeah, so I work with around 60 to 70 students. The number changes depending on the number of classes I have. But I get introduced, I meet the students the first week they join the program. So they have outcomes class. So at General Assembly, we call the career coaching sessions as outcomes classes. And so I meet with the students on a weekly basis. We discuss a lot of subjects, including what does an outcome mean, which could be very different for each individual. And we discuss the branding materials, resume, cover letter, LinkedIn profile, personal portfolio, and then how do they actually interview, behavioral interviewing, the star questions, and the job search strategy part. And then, so that's the in-course part where we discuss on a weekly basis different topics. And then immediately after the 3 months of the full-time program, we have a weekly cohort check-in where we actively help students in their job search and discuss, solve problems from ideas, ensure that they are confident in their job search. But yeah, ultimately my goal is to make sure that Cesarina doesn't need me anymore.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to think about it.
It's not just one coach. So during the in-course, it's mostly the assigned coach is interacting with the students. So I'm interacting with Cesarina and her classmates. But after the program ends, they get access to resources provided by the entire GA career coaching team. So we have a strong team of more than 60 career coaches, and we constantly on a weekly basis are doing webinars on very lot of different topics. And sometimes we have recruiter panels, employer panels, alumni panels. We organize hackathons, sprints. So there are so many resources that can help students be more prepared and be more confident in their job search.
I'm kind of curious, Cesarina, of all of those things, like, did any one of those really stand out to you as being like the most helpful part of the career curriculum?
It's hard to say. The weekly meetings that we had were extremely helpful. Just from like the first week of setting up your LinkedIn to like really the last week where it's like, you need to get your portfolio done and let's do a portfolio. Like it's all really, really helpful. So I think the weekly meetings for sure, each one focused on like a different thing that you need just as a modern professional entering the workforce. But I think for me also personally, the hackathon that they organized was like a really, and I think that would probably be the sentiment from a lot of my peers as well. It's very different. So I don't want to compare because the two are so like, the hackathon is just like one thing. And then, we have outcomes every week. So it was like 12 weeks. But the hackathon for me, really, really made me uncomfortable, and I approached it anyway. And I learned so much from that. Like I think I was so tired that night, like once we finally presented and everything, and I still was so inspired by the experience. I went on to write like a Medium article because I was just like, this is insane. I need to like, my brain was just like, you can do this. You can be uncomfortable and still do something. And that was really supported by like, Ramesh and like his coaching and everyone at GA. It really just gave me that confidence that like, you can do this. So that's
really cool. That's so fun. And it's nice to have like the kind of personal, weekly coaching sessions, but then also get to do this like really kind of uncomfortable like team project.
Yeah.
That pushed you outside of your comfort zone. That's fun.
And the reason my team did hackathon on Sprint was to get the students that cross-functional team experience. They already do a team project where they collaborate with their classmates, but they needed the experience working with designers and data scientists and other people. And hackathon was one idea we came up with where they can get that experience in a short time frame, but also build something very meaningful. Says, if I remember correctly, was it a small business hackathon?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So
what did you build for that, Seth?
So actually, it was really interesting. Like I said, I was really, really nervous about it. Initially going in, I was really uncomfortable because I didn't know what to expect at all. So I thought I would just go in there and essentially listen to other people's ideas and try and help build that somehow. I knew that I was going to be working cross-functionally. So there were 2 UX designers, 2 data scientists, and then 2 other engineers as well. So that was really cool. And I just thought just listen to that. But I ended up having a really good idea because my mom actually, she co-owns a small business. And so we ended up building essentially like a PPP loan predictor. And it's funny because now I'm seeing that like everywhere. Like I'm seeing ads for like different ones everywhere. Like, oh, that's interesting. That's what we built for the small business hackathon. But
such a good idea and so relevant. Yeah,
taking it to market. But yeah, it was really cool. We ended up calling it Stimulink, I believe. Yeah, it was really cool. So essentially, you're a small business. It just takes in the amount of employees that you have, the state that you're in. You would pick a lender, and it would more or less figure out how much money you would get to a certain percentage of confidence that the data scientist guys help build. So it was amazing. Cool. It was really, really cool. It was really
That's really neat and cool that you could work like cross-functionally with data scientists and UX designers. I mean, like that's probably a benefit of going to a school that actually teaches so many different verticals, right? You can
absolutely
actually work with those other students. That's really neat. So Cesarina, I want to really talk about like the careers curriculum, but what did you actually learn in the technical curriculum at GA? Like when you graduated, what did you feel like you knew?
So when I graduated, I felt far more comfortable in a couple of different languages, from HTML, CSS, your typical MERN stack. We learned React, some backend stuff as well. What we've learned, I would say it was mostly full stack. So there was front end and back end, JavaScript. We learned some Python, some Django, Node, Express, all these things. But really, ultimately, ultimately, what I think my biggest takeaway from it was the thinking that it kind of rewires your brain a little bit. You know, it's like when you take physics for the first time, like your brain starts to see things differently. So that's kind of what I got out of it. Um, Although, of course, like I can delve into these other topics. I kind of liken it to like I was totally unfamiliar with JavaScript when we first started, and I was so lost. And then at the end, they introduce you to Python, which is a totally different language. But at the end of those 12 weeks, Python is like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I know what this is. And like, you know, just to be able to go from not knowing anything at all to just being comfortable in now a different language, not just one, like a second one. Although Python, granted, I'm sure if people are technical will read this, is really easy, high level compared to JavaScript or a lot of other languages. But just that thinking itself, like that's amazing. So that was my personal biggest takeaway.
Kind of learning how to learn. That's really cool.
Right.
Rewiring your brains.
Exactly
That's like
that.
an interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah. And Cesarina, I'm curious, you mentioned that you used an ISA, an income share agreement. And so when you chose to use an ISA, I mean, that's so connected to getting a job, right? Like you start paying once you
it's literally
actually
contingent
get a job.
upon like, yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of good like incentive alignment there. So were there like certain career search, you know, tasks or like requirements that you had to do in order to graduate or in order to like be able to use that ISA?
So absolutely. You had to be, so essentially in order to even get into General Assembly through the ISA, there's kind of like this test that they give you prior to your start date. And you have to be able to pass that to a certain percentage in order to use the ISA, to start with the ISA. So it's kind of like saying, I'm not going into this totally blind. But for me, it was just a great choice. Of course, you have to be really in good standing with all of the projects that you had and the homework. I can't tell you off the top because my goal was to not miss anything, so I didn't. But definitely have to be in really good standing with projects, with homework, and with attendance as well. I did not miss any class. I did not miss homework. So I was like, there's no penalties on this end. Like I really needed the ISA. So for me, it was just a great choice.
It sounds like you took full advantage of all of the like classes and, you know, career curriculum and everything that was available. So, okay, cool. Ramesh, before the COVID-19 pandemic, did you do career coaching in person? And then did you go online during COVID, or have you always worked online?
So I joined GA in October last year. So that was in the middle of the pandemic. So I've been even though I am part of the GA Boston team, I've been working fully remotely from my home, and my students are from all over the country.
Very cool.
A lot of my students are from California, New York, and different states. Yeah.
And since you both work together remotely, like how did you collaborate in that way? What tools did y'all use to work together? And like, how did you actually make it work online?
Absolutely. So we primarily use Zoom for group meetings or one-to-one meetings, and Slack for regular communication. And whenever necessary, we also use LinkedIn, SMS, and other channels. But it's mostly Slack and Zoom, and most students really enjoy like the platforms.
Cool. That sounds great. And okay, Cesarina, I want to put you on the spot a little bit. Can you tell us the best piece of advice or like the biggest improvement you felt from Ramesh throughout this whole process? Is there a way to pinpoint that?
I mean, I can tell you the best advice that he gave me. Essentially, on our, I think our first one-on-one, I kind of gave him a little, he got to know me a little bit more, got to know my background a bit more. The nature of what I'm also trying to create on the side is a really sensitive topic. So I'm writing a book, and the nature of that book is I I guess it's like really it's a fine line that you kind of walk on, right? And I kind of just brought this up to him because I was a little bit concerned about forget putting it on my resume, like just putting it anywhere, right? So even though it's great experience, it's something in this interview process for the job I have now, someone like brought it up because I ended up putting it on my resume, and we had a great conversation about that. But he essentially said, like, do you really want to work somewhere where they're kind of judged, like you feel judged based on anything, right? And I was like, that is such a good point. And I didn't even think about that, right? Because in my brain, like, I'm this tiny person asking for a job, and it's like, please, please hand me a job, please, right? So you don't want to be judged by anything. You fear rejection and you fear all these other things, but you have to like value yourself. And yeah, you're working and you're asking for employment, right? Essentially, that's what you're doing when you're applying. But to some degree, it's like, you have to make that decision for yourself. Like, do you want to be in a space where you feel judged? And I certainly feel that I'm not in a space where I feel judged. One of my employer's core values is inclusion. So like, it's perfect. I feel really happy. So that was really good advice.
You're completely right. You should be asking yourself questions about and asking the company questions as you're doing the whole interview process, and deciding if you actually want to be a part of that team as well. So that's really good. Absolutely. Really good advice.
That for me, honestly, it was just a huge moment of clarity, and I've taken that with me quite literally everywhere. So
I feel like that's maybe something that we overlook when we think about a career change. It's not just those technical skills, but it's also it is an emotional journey, right? Deciding what you want to do with your career, because it's a big part of your life. Well, Cez, you did actually land at a job, so congratulations at your job, on your job. So how did you get connected to the new company, and just tell us about the what you're working on?
This company is pretty well known in my area. I'm in New Jersey. ICIMS is a well-known, one of the best places to work here. They're a software company. They're in the talent acquisition space, and they essentially help companies attract, engage, hire, and advance the right talent to build a winning team. So I was just looking through their website, and I was like, let's see what I think I can do. And I applied to a bunch of different jobs that they had. The recruiter for this particular job, which is a technical support engineer, reached out first. So I just went with it. And that role itself, the one that they were originally hiring for, was not as technical. And in my interviewing and as I got further into the process, they figured out okay, maybe she can do a different role. So it's still the same role, but it's in a different team that does require more technical aptitude. But it's been, it's my third day in, but it's been really fun. And it's just really—
You're on day 3.
It's day 3. Today's completed day 3. Yeah.
So wait, what is your actual role now?
I'm a technical support engineer on a product specialist team.
That's awesome.
So from my understanding, I'm one of, I think, 5 people on the team now. So that's pretty cool. We're growing. Yeah, but I'm just trying to pick up as much as I can. It's going to be a very, very fun time.
I've talked to so many people who graduate from boot camps and go into that role at different companies, technical support engineer. And I feel like it is the perfect, if you were not technical before you did a boot camp, it's the perfect on-ramp into a company, really understanding the customer base, really getting to do some technical work, and then kind of putting that together and building off of it as you go. So congratulations. Yay.
Thank you.
Happy third day. Ramesh,
Thanks.
Ramesh, when you look at the job market right now, I know you started at GA as a career coach in October, so maybe you don't have like a before after COVID, point of view with like GA students. But how difficult are you seeing the job search process be, during this very challenging past year?
Even though I've not been at GA for more than 1 year, but I've heard stories, and there is the outcomes report which General Assembly publishes every year. So generally, GA, until before the COVID happened, 99% of the students who participate in full-time post-course outcomes get a job within 180 days, right? So the numbers have been slightly lower after the COVID started, and it's right now around 80%, but the number has been increasing. Okay, so as the economy opens up and companies are starting to hire more, the numbers are getting better and better. But again, it's not just the number. A lot of students have started looking at other opportunities. Freelancing is a big one for UX designers and for a few software engineers, contract opportunities, internships. So that's why we use the term outcome, because it could be very different for each individual. Still, I think it's getting better and better.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective.
After I graduated, I spent the rest of the time essentially like proactively and vehemently like job seeking. Treated it kind of like school, like a boot camp. So I would spend time applying and then strategically on LinkedIn looking at like how can I connect with someone. And it kind of occurred to me mostly everybody is applying for the same types of jobs, and I figured this out actually. So GA sends a like a Monday newsletter like every Monday, and on one of those newsletters I found a virtual job fair, so I attended it. And literally, I mean, the first company that I went into, like their exhibit, their virtual exhibit, everyone was in the same boat as me. Every single person. They were like, yeah, I was unemployed due to COVID, just recently graduated. Like, I was literally in a room with 10 other people who had graduated from different boot camps. And I was like, how do I differentiate myself? And that to me, I think attending that just, again, was a great moment of clarity, because it was like, okay, obviously everybody's going for the same kind of job. And that one company had one position available for what, they were all seeking. So, it's funny, that same company I reached out to and I said, I have a great technical aptitude from this software boot camp that I just graduated from. And my previous roles are client facing, and then geared towards more customer facing roles. And I figured it was way easier to get hired that way than it was to basically search for what everybody else is searching for. So I ended up not going with that company. They did not meet my criteria, thanks to developing boundaries from Ramesh. So that was great.
One of the biggest challenge a lot of bootcamp graduates face is conveying their past, and they're bringing their full selves to a job, right? They get in this rat race of finding a job, but they forget that they will be a valuable team player, valuable member, and their uniqueness is their biggest advantage, because there are millions of university graduates, tens of thousands of bootcamp graduates every year. How are they unique? That's what matters most, right? And we career coaches try to integrate their past and their passion, their goals into their job search, right? So, for example, some of my students have been, for example, worked in the retail. So one thing they could do is use their retail experience, whether it was a little bit in the management or customer facing role, to in their job search. How? Use the existing network, highlight the skills they have learned, the transferable skills, right? They forget that they have skills and experiences that are valuable to the right team and to the right manager. It's a light bulb moment for most students. Like they already have experiences and skills that are really important, transferable skills. And regarding the technical interview part, again, yes, of course, the companies are looking to hire the graduates to do a job, whether it's coding or designing or analyzing data. But they're not, when they are hiring a bootcamp graduate or a recent graduate, they're not looking for someone who can solve a problem perfectly, thoroughly. They want to hire a human being, not a robot, right? They want someone who can communicate the thought process. They want someone who can learn, someone who can be a team player, right? Someone who can grow and be interested in the team, the company, the product, the customer, right? Those aspects are equally important to as much as whether you can solve a problem perfectly or not. So that's we train on making sure communicating the thinking process and your value.
Absolutely. Well, that is really good advice. I mean, we know that the average boot camper has about 7 or 8 years of work experience before they even go to a boot camp. So everyone does have that, that background and something that kind of makes them unique in terms of their past career. Got to find what makes you unique and special. And it sounds like Seth did that and got a job. So congrats. Yeah. Well, Cesarina, I like to ask this to everyone that's done a boot camp, and you can look back and kind of think about this however it makes sense to you, maybe your new salary or your quality of life. But was General Assembly worth it for you?
It was absolutely worth it. It was great. I think it's ironic just the way that like life pans out, right? So I chose that the military, kind of just was not working out for me, but I would have gone through a boot camp anyway, right? And I ended up going through a different boot camp. Yeah, so I always think about that. I'm like, I did technically go through a boot camp, a very different one. But it was absolutely worth it. From the network that has now expanded, to the resources that they provided and the knowledge base that they provided. It's just, I'm a different and a better person for it. So absolutely worth it.
That's amazing. That's so cool to hear. Well, Cesarina, Ramesh, thank you so much for joining. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure a future boot camper knows before we wrap it up?
I would say just a little tip, like find ways to differentiate yourself. Look at trends, put yourself in places where you are uncomfortable and embrace being uncomfortable. Being in a boot camp itself, unless you're like a super genius and you've done this your whole life, will be an uncomfortable situation. Don't be afraid to ask questions and really put yourself out there. Like, you'll be better for it.
Yeah. Similarly, start networking early. Whether you're a career changer, recent high school graduate, recent college graduate, talk to people in the industry, understand where you are a better fit, which industry, which sub-industry, which type of companies, small companies, startups, non-profits, which kind of roles. So you can focus your energy on getting the right skills and getting that first job. Okay. And when you're choosing a bootcamp, make sure what you're getting into. It's a good 3-month commitment, full time. It's equal to a full-time job, and it's a lot of hard work. So make sure you understand what you're going to get into and take full advantage of the program, like Cess did.
That was going to be my advice that no one asked for is to make sure you do your research, ask those questions like Seth did, ask about what kind of access you're going to have to career services once you start and after you graduate. So y'all, that was amazing advice. And I think that is the perfect place to end. So thank you so much, Ramesh and Cesarina, for joining us and walking through the career coach, student relationship. Such great advice for anyone who's graduating from a boot camp. And thank you to our viewers for making it to the end of this video. I hope you learned something, and let us know in the comments which boot camp you'd like to see on the next episode of the Course Report YouTube channel. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for having us.